Welcome to Last First Date Radio, featuring interviews with experts in dating, relating, and mating in midlife. And now, here's your host, Sandy Weiner.
I'm going to talk a little bit about my own reinvention because I reinvented my entire life after my divorce. I had been living kind of a shadow of who I was, and actually a friend pointed that out to me and said, you are living a fragment of your potential. And if you're listening to this and you have been in that same boat, just know that life is short and reinvention is possible. And here's the story of my reinvention. So I married at the age of 28. I thought that the love that I was seeking was not really possible because I had so many relationships that didn't work out. My conclusion was, it's not realistic. It's a fairy tale. Love is something you need to compromise for, so I settled for somebody who I cared about. He seemed safe to me. He seemed like a person who would be a good dad and a good provider, and those were all important. And we shared many common values. And so I thought, this is it. This is going to be the relationship that will last a lifetime. I knew I did not want to repeat my parents' story, which was a very rocky marriage for 29 years until they got divorced when we all moved out of the house and were grown up. So we experienced a relationship that was difficult, as many of you have, and I wanted to do better. So I sought out a relationship that I thought was safe. And you can't really guarantee safety, but you can start with a very strong foundation for love. And unfortunately, because I had given up, I didn't have the strong foundation. Our relationship was challenged very early on when I first had a miscarriage a few months after our marriage, and about a year later I gave birth to our first child. His name was Avi, and he was born with a rare genetic disease called Fanconi anemia. And he had many, many birth defects, and we did everything in our power to be advocates for Avi. And unfortunately, my husband really had a hard time emotionally with having a child with so many challenges. And what it brought out in me was a sort of a warrior. I became very strong in how I fought for my son. I learned as much as I could at a time when there was no internet. And it meant going to the library. It meant becoming an expert in a disease that I knew nothing about, that doctors knew nothing about. And so it sort of gave me this inner strength that I didn't know I had. And I fought very hard for Avi to have the best medical care and to have the best life possible. At the age of 5, he suddenly developed a brain tumor, and within a week he was gone. It was pretty shocking to lose him so suddenly, and the way that my husband and I grieved was just completely different. And I just dealt with it. I dealt with our differences, even though it was lonely. It was very difficult, and I'm sure many of you who have been in difficult relationships can relate. And so I just kind of coasted. I developed my own life outside of the marriage in terms of my friendships and my hobbies, and got involved in the PTA. I was out pretty much every night doing other things to kind of numb myself and be able to stay in the marriage. Well, eventually I couldn't do it anymore. Too much was at stake, and I had a wake-up call that I needed to get out in order to live the life I was meant to live. I went to coaching school because coaching was something that came naturally to me my whole life. And up until that point, I had been an artist. I was a painter. I was a calligrapher. I taught art to children in sleepaway camps. I did pretty much everything art-related. And I, excuse me, And I had never done anything like coaching, but it was what I was for everybody in my life. I was always the go-to person. And so I decided to go to school and learn how to be a life coach and get certification in a top school. The Coaches Training Institute was where I attended. And so I changed my career. I moved into a new house and had a mortgage for the first time, and I was a single parent. So I pretty much changed everything about my life, all the stressors. I had already been through the loss of a child. How much harder could it be? I was pretty resilient. And step by step, I created a life for myself and made sure that my kids were in a really good place before dating. So I spent about 2 years getting my life in order before getting out there and dating. And when I was finally ready to date, I said to my kids, I'm going to be dating, and I want to promise you something. I will never introduce you to anyone unless the relationship becomes really serious. And I have kept that promise. It's difficult to date when you have children who are of dating age, and 2 of my kids at the time were teenagers who were of the age where they were dating themselves. And so I kept my dating life pretty private from my children, and they're pretty grateful about that. But what I really want to say is that through hard work and through clarity of focus, I have been able to create a career that I wake up every day absolutely loving. I love what I do. I love seeing change in people. I love seeing that people can find love at any age and can really transform their lives, no matter how old they are, no matter what their relationship history is. And often we have fears. So what do you do about fear? Fear often runs the show. So I had a huge amount of fear. I had a fear of not being perfect. How many of you can relate to that? So if you think that you can only launch a new business if it's all set and if you have 10 degrees because one of them is not enough and you have to go to school and learn more and more and more and more, it's not true. You have your own inner wisdom that you can rely on. And once you start tapping into that inner wisdom and you see what your true gifts are, you can share those with the world. And that's what I have done. I have launched many, many programs, and I'm learning along the way. I don't claim to know everything, but I do claim to have a brain that is good at synthesizing information, good at processing, and good at disseminating and writing and talking about the information that I have learned through my own experiences and through all the people that I have coached and interviewed on this program. I have interviewed the top people in the field of relationships and dating. I've read their books. I've read countless books. So know that you have gifts. You got to find what it is that you absolutely do best at, and trust that you don't have to be perfect. There is no perfect. In fact, imperfection is really where it's at. It's like a great place for you to share your expertise from a place of imperfection. And the more you can be comfortable with the fact that we are all human, we are all imperfect, and that's actually the beauty of who we are. So I want to encourage you to take one step towards dreaming bigger, finding your passion, finding who you are, and reinvent your life no matter whether you're 40, 50, 60, or beyond. It is never too late to have the love you want, to have the life you want. And I can't wait to talk to you again next week on Last First Date Radio.